I'm not a big believer of watching biographical content because entrepreneurship is a bunch of traits that you can find in many, many places. For example, entrepreneurship is a lot about storytelling. Then I would not want you to watch a movie about Elon Musk to learn about storytelling because maybe he's a terrible storyteller. Maybe. You need to learn storytelling from maybe watching a cinema about, I don't know, a Shah Rukh or an Amir talking about storytelling as their profession in that movie. And you will learn something from that. Or it's about persuasion. And you may not watch that in a movie about entrepreneurs, but you will learn persuasion somewhere else. So I think it's about decoding what are the traits to be a great entrepreneur and then find the best places to learn those traits.
What is a story for you?
Anything that's an interestingness in any capacity.
Break down a story, because that's, I think, one of the competitive advantages you have over a lot of the people in your field.
Yeah, so look, there are rules in the universe, and like a story is 3 acts, a beginning, a middle, and an end. You can apply that to anything. You can apply that to Jack and Jill, you can apply that to fucking Godfather. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's a setup, a conflict, and a resolution. That is every story that you've ever been told. If it doesn't contain those 3 parts, it wasn't a story.
Setup, conflict, resolution.
Yeah, like that's
Let's go through one of you.
That's a cup of water. That is not a story. I was thirsty. I walked around your space. I got a cup of water. That's a story. Setup, conflict, resolution. There's just 3 acts. The story doesn't have to be good. It just has to be told well. And that's what I would say, like, it's not that I live an interesting life, it's just that I can tell it really well.
What makes a great setup?
I think, for me personally, it's when you're inviting the audience in on it with you. I know when I'm watching a movie and I feel like I'm part of it, then I'm the most excited to keep going. So the ChatGPT video is just the last one I uploaded. It's not one of my best videos at all. It's just an average Casey video. The whole point of me reading the script that ChatGPT gave me on a piece of paper, which cost us an extra day because I didn't own a printer, I had to go get one. And for me to show the audience that I'm holding a piece of paper was just to constantly remind you, the viewer, that, hey man, you and I, you viewer, me, we're in this together and we're kind of making fun of this silly AI thing.
Yeah.
But you and I are in on the joke. You're not outside the joke. If you're watching a movie, if you're hearing a story that you don't get, you feel outside. It's like 2 friends telling an inside joke. You feel like a dick bag. Like, why don't I get to be a part? So for me, my favorite kinds of stories are ones that bring you in.
Never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And that's where the quotation starts. I think of it much more as like, your primary job is to tell the story as effectively as possible. Everything about Dieter Dangler was real. And how do you, as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, illustrate the profundity that was the impact of him being a prisoner for so many years? And that door was a very, very, very real, very literal illustration of that. So was it a lie? Is the version of Casey in the vlog the real version? Yes, it's just not the whole version. There's so much more to life than what can be shared in 7 to 9 minutes. Dieter Dangler was in his 60s when Werner made the movie about him. And he was telling the entire scope of a human being's life, 60 years, and he told that story in 110 minutes. So whatever, you as the filmmaker, you as the storyteller, have an obligation to tell that story in the most effective way possible. And I don't think Werner telling him to open up the door like that affects any of the truths of that movie whatsoever.
Well, so other than typing and Excel, have you found any other sort of meta skills that are generally useful for life?
Yes, but they weren't taught in university. So one is storytelling and selling. Like, I think the #1 skill that helped me be a strong founder, especially in the early days of building our business, is the ability to sell. And I think I'm blessed in the sense that that's just one of my intuitive superpowers. It's something my dad worked on with me as I was growing up. He was really focused on my ability to articulate. He thought that was really important. If you are trying to elevate yourself as a professional in any way, not just as an entrepreneur, just in your career, you find yourself selling yourself far more times than you realize. So like just even talking about a business when we were starting Morning Brew, we're talking about a startup that was a media company. Media companies are generally not venture backable, so you can't raise from institutions. We had a newsletter, that's all we had. We had 30,000 subscribers at the time. We weren't making any money, but we had to raise money in order to possibly get to a place of making money. And so selling investors on why a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old who have a media company, where media companies are generally not profitable businesses and we weren't making money yet. And by the way, it's not really a media company, it's a newsletter. We had to sell them on why they should put their hard-earned money in our business. We had to sell our initial employees on why they should leave their steady jobs to join a business that's making $0. And we had to sell advertisers, because that was the first way we made money as a business. We had to sell advertisers like Discover Card, large financial institutions, on why they should even bother wasting their time on a company that reaches 30,000 people versus allocating that time to thinking about, say, a television commercial that reaches millions of people. And so I'd say that is the number one meta skill. I'd actually argue it's a meta skill even like in personal life, not just professional life.
I've heard a lot of people say that you know the skill of selling is kind of one of the most useful skills you can have. But I've always kind of wondered, and I never quite followed this thought of like, what does that actually mean? Like, I wouldn't say I'm good at selling, but I guess I have sold stuff in the past, and I just don't really think of selling as like a thing.
You sell yourself on YouTube every time you post a video. And this is actually an interesting thing and I've thought a lot about this, is what's the difference between sales or selling and storytelling? And my view is just, if something comes off as selling, it's just shitty storytelling. And so my view is like, why do people watch your videos for a long time? Why did you just hit 3 million subscribers on YouTube when there's an abundance of content? Because you're not the first person to talk about topics related to productivity, to bettering yourself, right? You have found a way to storytell in a way that captivates people and keeps them engaged. So you are innately good at storytelling. I think it is quite natural and intuitive to you. It doesn't feel like work to script and then deliver that in front of a camera. You couldn't be where you are today without being exceptional at storytelling.
How do people get better at this?
It's a great question. My answer would be, it's a combination of practice, of shadowing and feedback, and of understanding the fundamentals of what it means to storytell well. So going in reverse order, I think that there are tried and true, there's the science to it. There's like tried and true formulas for what is a captivating story for people. And so like, for example, I'm reading the book Creativity Inc. right now, which is the story of Pixar. Like there are story arcs, which is like, there is a hero. The hero is on a journey. The hero on the journey experiences a challenge. In experiencing the challenge, they go through adversity, they overcome the challenge, and they reach their goal. Like, that is one story arc. I think there are a number of formulas this way. So at base level, I think studying the best storytellers of all time and studying the formulas that they use to tell stories is the first step. The second step is what I would say is the combination of practice and shadowing. And so the example I'll use for you is, in the early days of Morning Brew, when we had to pitch advertisers on advertising in our newsletter, I had never sold in a professional setting anything before, but I had to do it. There was no option. We had to make money. And so I, got reps pitching, probably in our first year, 250 advertisers on 30-minute calls about who Morning Brew was, what we stood for, and why spending your money with us was worth your time and your money based on what your goals were. And the first pitch I did, probably the second pitch, probably the 20th pitch I did was really bad. But every time I would take 5 to 10 minutes after a pitch and I'd have a reflection period where I would write down what are the things that I think I did well and what is one thing I would change for the next pitch I do. And I would record every pitch I did as well. So then thinking about shadowing and feedback, right? I was delivering feedback for myself, but a big thing that I did with our junior salespeople when they joined Morning Brew was when they would do a pitch in the early days, I would join them on those calls so that, first of all, like, I would do the sales pitch, they would listen to me, so they would sponge up that information. We would do that for a few weeks, and then gradually I would hand off the reins to them where they would start doing the pitch. We would record it. We would listen back to it together after, which, by the way, for anyone who hasn't listened to their voice before and hasn't listened to themselves do a sales pitch, it is going to be excruciating for you to do the first time, but it is so valuable. At the end of the day, there is this art and science to understanding what works for you to storytell in a way that leverages your strengths, but also understanding the science of what works well and what are kind of like the natural story arcs that people over the course of time are always attracted to.
Nice. That's a great answer.